Quite unbelievably, quite unbelievably, the last time I introed a podcast after a Carlton win in the home and away season, in a home and away season, was episode 2 of this podcast. Episode 2. With that being said, welcome to episode 22 of the Footy and Stuff podcast after a Carlton win. Yes, thank you, thank you. How amazing. Um, I sidetracked myself. Where do we go? Where do we usually go after this? Welcome. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. As I said, episode 22. We got lots to get into. Gather round. Wasn't there, which means I could watch every game except for North Melbourne and Gold Coast, which I watched the first quarter of, and then I got to after because Carlton were playing, and that overlapped for some reason. Anyway, enough of that. We got plenty to get to. Round review, player of the year, super coach, tips, and then we're done. And we're on to round 6 this weekend, which is great. So let's get that going now. Massive, massive weekend of footy in Adelaide and an enjoyable one as well. We started off with the Crows and the Cats. This one was fascinating to watch because barring a period in the second quarter where the Crows looked like they were completely getting away from the Cats, it was fairly back and forth ish for most of the game. The first quarter was really good. Second quarter, as I said, the Crows really looked like they were getting a hold on the game. And I thought they were just going to run away with it. There was a period of 3 or 4 consecutive goals. Fogg, Tex, Ben Keys, yeah, so 3. And it just seemed like the Crows had them where they wanted them. And I thought, yeah, this is, and I tipped the Crows as well. So I was pretty confident that was where they were going to take it. But the Cats, credit to them, they fought back to a position where the game was winnable. And by the fourth quarter, they were just too strong. And they deserve every single bit of this win, in my opinion, as well. Jeremy Cameron was unbelievable in the last quarter, as was Patrick Dangerfield. The two of them were probably two of the best players on the ground. Max Holmes and Bailey Smith as well in that midfield are just phenomenal. There have been so many questions about this Geelong midfield and how I guess it would compete against the big top midfields in the competition. But credit where credit's due, because against the midfield that I've said has been one of the best in the comp this season, in Rankin, Dawson, and Saligo, Max Holmes and Bailey Smith and their teammates just held up perfectly. It was so good to watch. They were fantastic. Yeah, Geelong were just really strong here. This game gives me a bit of confidence that the Cats are going to be there when it matters most. I think they're more than good enough to take it up to the best teams in the comp. In terms of the Adelaide Crows, they had a fantastic start to the year. The second half in particular wasn't perhaps indicative of what I thought or what I think that they're capable of, rather. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. I'm still pretty bullish on them as a side. But yeah, great match to kick off Gather Round. We then move on to Friday, and it's Collingwood and Sydney. And this one again as well started off pretty entertaining. First quarter was high scoring, 4 goals each, fairly back and forth. Wasn't really too sure who had the momentum and who had a hold of the other team. It was very good. But the more the game went on, the more we saw Collingwood sort of pull away and look the stronger, more composed team. Sydney really weren't playing their best footy on Friday night, and I think their fans know it. They probably know it. And that's just something they got to work on. There were elements of their game that I thought were a lot better. Isaac Heaney was back to his best. I thought he was by far their best, one of the best players on the ground, actually. But I think ultimately they just weren't clean enough, and Collingwood in the end made them pay for that. That they just weren't really reminiscent of the Sydney that we've become accustomed to, especially last year. And they're going to need to respond. They're going to need to respond pretty quickly. In terms of the games that are coming up for the Swans, if I look here, Port Adelaide this week, the perfect example, a team coming off a pretty solid win. I mean, as solid as it gets, really, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, Port bringing a lot of momentum into that. That'll be good. A bogey team for them as well. And then they play Gold Coast and the Giants and the Bombers away from home as well, which is always a good game. So yeah, they've really got to respond here because there are some big teams coming up. And if they don't get a couple of wins out of this pack of the next 4 or 5 games, it's going to start to look a bit dicey for them, whether they like it or not. So yeah, Collingwood fantastic though, a lot better than I thought they were against Carlton. And yeah, they got the win and they're looking pretty good heading into round 6. Moving into Saturday, the Roos go down to the Suns at Barossa Park, which is a fantastic venue, by the way. I was so impressed by what they managed to pull together on the weekend in the Barossa. North go down by 52 points in the first game there on the weekend. And they're just so frustrating, aren't they? From what I watched live, the first quarter and a bit of the second quarter, the Roos were extremely competitive. Which is what we've spoken about with them over the first 2 or 3 weeks. They really kept it up to the Suns. It was goal for a lot of the first quarter. They kept it tight going into the second half, 8 points. And even most of the third quarter, they went ahead in the third quarter as well. So they were just competitive. They kept it tight. They were playing their way, but it just seems like they can't do that for more than 2 or 3 quarters any week now. It's happening every week where they sort of show these signs. They play this brand of football that's trying to be, I guess, implemented, if you want to say that. And they let it get away from them. And granted, the Suns are a very good side, but the way that it panned out in that last quarter is just, even late in that third quarter, they had a lead pretty deep into the third term and they ended up 19 points down going into the final change. And it's just, yeah, I don't, it'd be so frustrating as an North fan seeing all these signs and everything coming together, and then it just all seems to go to waste in final quarters. And as we've said again, there aren't really, or there isn't really going to be much room for honourable losses anymore with this North team because they're expected to start making that climb now. So yeah, in spite of the good footy that North played for a lot of this game, you can't really give them too much credit for it because the Suns just looked dominant and they picked up a pretty dominant win. Enough about North though. In terms of the Suns, fantastic again. The midfield's unbelievable. Man, we're saying the same things about this Gold Coast team every week. It actually looks like it's properly finally coming together. After all these years, they're going to be there. They're going to be there. 4-0. They're second on the ladder right now, 168.3%. Richmond up next, so they're going to have likely another massive percentage booster, another massive confidence builder as well. They're looking really good. The further this season goes, they're looking really, really good, the Suns. Shortly after, we had Carlton versus West Coast at Adelaide Oval. Carlton pick up the win by 71 points. Sigh of relief, thank God. Now, obviously, it's a 71-point win. Yeah, I mean, 71 points is 71 points. You take the percentage boost and you move on. There are a lot of Carlton fans that are, how do I word this? Overly unhappy with this one, I think. Because ultimately, as I said, 71-point win. You take it, especially when it's a win that was as needed and as necessary and um as what's the word I'm looking for? It had to happen. The win had to happen. So you take it. Is this the most amazing football? Is it the football that I want to see us play every week for the rest of the year? Is it the football that's going to get us to where we want to be? No, of course not. And you could see that at times, at plenty of times during the game. But what I admired most about this game of football, in my opinion, was there are many players in this Carlton team that have copped it over the last few weeks, for whatever reason, a myriad of reasons. We've been atrocious. But I think some of the responses from some of these players were fantastic. Mitch McGovern is the first one I see here, one of the best players on the ground, has been the target of a lot of criticism. Nick Haynes is another one who copped it, especially in that first round performance against Richmond. He was a lot better. Sam Doherty has copped it pretty much every week. He was a lot better, I thought. People have criticised Ollie Hollands, Matthew Cottrell, and I thought they were both much better. Matthew Cottrell especially was one of our best players. Very, very good. But yeah, I just thought so many of our players were a lot better. Is there room to grow? Yeah, 100%. There's still so much room to grow. There's still so much work to do. On to the next one. As Vossi said in his press conference, I thought Vossi was fantastic in his presser. He's copped a lot of criticism for the way he's spoken after games at times, but I thought he had the correct response to what he saw. And that was, we got the win. On to the next one. That's pretty much what it is. So yeah, we take the win. We enjoy the win. I'm hoping everyone's enjoying the win enough because we deserve to enjoy a win after some of the stuff we've had to sit through over the last few weeks. But yeah, no, much better. We'll enjoy it as I said, and hopefully it gets better and it continues week on week. As for the Eagles, yeah, not good. Not good at all. What is there to say that hasn't really been said about the West Coast Eagles over the last couple of weeks? It's not good. They're going to be easy beats more often than not this year, unless something changes pretty quickly. But they've still got time. Yeah, hopefully they can move on and make something out of this year, show a little bit of progress before it's done. But yeah, the signs aren't lovely. They're not great. Moving on to Saturday twilight, 4:15 at Norwood, and the Western Bulldogs, after leading for about a half of football, um, drop a lead very early in the fourth quarter, and they lose to the Brisbane Lions by 21 points. So this one was fascinating to watch. The Lions have done it again, and this is possibly the best one yet. Just, I mean, obviously they were up at quarter time, um, but they go into halftime down by 33 points. They look like they're down and out. They're nowhere near in control. The dogs are all over them, and then they just something clicks, and they always get it done. And it's oh man, this football team just oozes class. That's the easiest way I can describe them. No matter what the situation is, they always find a way to grind it out, and they've done it consistently already this year. Like they were down by 33 points at halftime, and they looked, quite frankly, they looked poor, and they still get the job done. Insane. That midfield is just, if that's so deep and it's so, I spoke about it last week, and I'll speak about it again, especially the depth, which I didn't touch on enough, when I spoke about them last week. However, McCluggage, Will Ashcroft, Dunkley, Neil, Levi Ashcroft, fantastic once again. Jasper Fletcher, Zach Bailey, who's not really a midfielder, but he gets up the ground, he contributes. He's that kind of player. Just yeah, so hard to stop. And then Eric Hipwood, who was literally, and when I say literally, I mean literally a non-factor in the first half, barely touched the football. Um, Kicked 5 goals in a half of footy, and pretty much delivered Brisbane the win in the end. Just unbelievable. I mean, we questioned when Joe Danaher went out the door who's going to step up. I thought Logan Morris was very good in the game as well, by the way. But Eric Hipwood particularly needed to take on a bigger role in this Brisbane side. And he hasn't really done it to this point so far this season. This is the Eric Hipwood that Brisbane need. Doesn't need to kick 5 goals and a half every week, obviously. But just the ability to be able to contribute on the scoreboard the way he did in that game. This is what they need from him more often, really. Just to be a little bit more reliable. And late in that game, he was just about as reliable as it gets. So, yeah, unbelievable from him and unbelievable from the Lions as well. The Dogs were very good in the second half. Can't take it away from them. Sam Darcy looked like he was on for another big one. I thought he was very good, especially early. I thought their midfield was very good as well. Ed Richards, Matt Kennedy, Libba was quite good as well. Yeah, but it just, yeah, that second half, they just let the Lions run over the top of them. And that's what's going to happen. And that's what's going to happen when the Lions are a side that are as classy as they are. They're just going to do that this season if you let them. So, yeah, unreal. Such a good watch. On to Saturday night, the D's and the Bombers at Adelaide Oval. The Bombers win by 39 points. And it was as expected, really, as sad as it is for the Demons and their fans. I just didn't really see it going any other way. I don't remember what I tipped the Bombers by, but I just couldn't see the D's winning, and they proved me right. Yeah, the Bombers, again, weren't necessarily fantastic, but they did more than enough to get the job done. Merritt was fantastic again. He's just, as a Carlton fan, obviously, I haven't loved a lot of Bombers players in my time, but I love Zach Merritt, and I love watching him play. So good. But even aside from him, Nick Martin was very good. Jai Menzies was one of the best players on the ground, absolutely killed them forward of the ball. Archie Roberts was very good. Will Setterfield on return was quite good as well. Sam Draper was all over it, 22 touches for the big man. Yeah, they were just no match to Demons. No match at all. I saw a stat, and I need to confirm it before I say it on the pod, but I don't know how I actually confirm it. Can I confirm it via the stats on the AFL website? That is the question. I'll say the stat. And then whether it's right or wrong, at least I have vocalized that I don't know if it's correct. But I saw a stat that the Demons had 16 center clearances for the game, which they did, and they scored one behind from those center clearances, which is just fascinating to me. That is insane. It's terrible. It's terrible. Something's got to happen. You can't, especially with the players that you have at your disposal. Like, who is getting these center clearances? Cozzy Pickett, Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver all had three. Trent Rivers had two. Max Gawn had two. And then Caleb Windsor, Harvey Langford, and Jake Bowie. Jack Viney had none, which is interesting. But with those players getting these clearances and sending the ball inside forward 50, how are you not making anything of this? Their midfield is more than good enough in terms of personnel. Their forward line as well should be doing a lot more with that. I know they've been criticized for their lack of proper target man in that forward line. Obviously they got Jacob Van Rooyen, who I think is more than good enough as their full forward. Malcolm as well, Bailey Fritsch as well. But I just think these forwards are good enough to make more of a center clearance battle, which they won. Like it was 16-7 for the game. They've got to make more of that. I know I'm really honing in on one stat, and there was so much more wrong with Melbourne's game as a whole. But that for me is perhaps the worst. They won the ruck battle, they won the clearance battle, and they made so little of it. Um, and they were just torched going the other way. Interesting. Yeah, good win for the Bombers. Really bad for the D's. We're going to see where they go from here. I think they've got a couple of easier, if you want to say, games coming up that will give them a chance to bounce back. So they got the Dockers this week at the G, which will be a tough one. Should be a tough one. But then the next two games after that are the Tigers at the MCG and the Eagles at Optus Stadium. Those are far and away their two best chances to not only get a win, but get a convincing win that's going to build momentum. So they need to do that. If they don't, if they don't have two wins out of the next three games at least, it's oh, if it's not worry signs already, it's going to be very interesting um to see where they go. Given the next two after that are Hawthorn and Brisbane, potentially the two best teams in the competition. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Saturday night was not good for them. And Essendon will be pretty happy with the win there. As we move on to Sunday, Richmond and Fremantle, the Dockers get up by 61 points at Barossa Park. The Tigers started this game fantastically, and I was baffled. I was genuinely baffled because they kicked three of the first four, and you're thinking, what's going on here? But yeah, the Dockers started to peg it back, and then by probably the third quarter, because they were only up by 10 points at half time, they really pulled away and just dominated them in the last quarter and played the footy that we expected. It was a criticism pre-game from Justin Longmuir of his side that they haven't been able to play four quarters. And that kind of happened again. So that is the big sore point, I guess, in terms of where the improvement has to come from. But 10 goal win's a 10 goal win. They'll take the 10 goal win and they'll move on. And I think they're a good side and I think they'll get a lot better still. And when those four quarter performances start to come in, they're going to be very dangerous and very hard to stop. But yeah, their midfield was on again. Andrew Brayshaw was fantastic. Caleb Serong was tagged out of it a little bit early by Camden McIntosh, I believe. But he found his way into the game and was very good. Hayden Young was good on return, 18 touches and 2 goals. And Josh Tracy was just fantastic with those 6 goals. Could have been more. Honestly, I thought watching him early, I don't remember how many kicked in the first quarter or the first two quarters really. But I was sitting there thinking he could be on for 10 here, genuinely. Like he was all over them. But yeah, the Dockers get the big win. And at face value, probably not much more that they could ask for, in my opinion. Next up was the Saints and the Giants. The Giants win by 28 points at Norwood Oval. Not a bad game of football to watch. Pretty back and forth first quarter, and after that, I thought the Giants were just a bit too good for the Saints. As expected, their quality really shone through, up by 50 points at the final change. And the Saints were able to drag that back to 28 points in the end. But yeah, the Giants were just way too good. And they keep hold of a top four spot and can carry a little bit more momentum into their next few games. From a Saints perspective, they were looking very good, obviously, in the last few weeks. It's not really anything to be embarrassed about losing to this Giants side because I still think they're one of the bigger threats this season. And it's probably a good one for the Saints and their fans to take as well at this point in terms of the expectations that they have for this side. Just to be able to keep a lid on it for now, let them play their football. They're not bad at all, but they're also not necessarily at the level of a GWS or a Brisbane or a Hawthorn. clearly evidenced by this game. So yeah, we'll see where the Saints go from here. But it was an interesting loss nonetheless. Now, we can move on to by far the most talked about game of the weekend, Sunday night at Adelaide Oval, where the Power defeat the Hawks by 30 points, 18-13, 121 to 14-7, 91. And that scoreline, despite the comeback, which I'm not taking anything away from Hawthorn, and we'll talk about it in a sec, but this scoreline flatters them massively when you consider the football that they were playing in that first half, probably in the first three quarters, really. Just terrible. Nowhere near the level that we've come to expect from this Hawthorn side. As I said, they start to mount that comeback late, kick 7 goals in the last quarter. I'm not taking anything away from that because I don't think Port necessarily took the foot off the pedal. They still kicked 4 goals in that last quarter. They still look quite good. The Hawks just started to find their feet a little bit in the game. However, as I said, it was just really terrible early. And I am going to pump up my own tires a little bit here because I did call it. And I'm glad that I saw it the way I did because it's pretty much exactly how it happened. I cited these massive games, Anzac Day, the opening game of round one between Carlton and Richmond, so on and so forth, where teams just stand up and they go out there and they get the job done because of what the game means. And I know this isn't a rivalry or a traditional game in the sense of what Anzac Day is or what Carlton versus Richmond is in round one or what Carlton versus Collingwood is. They're always fairly competitive to an extent. But um, this game had so much storyline and there was just so much going into it. If the Hawks win and it's a close game, I'm still not entirely wrong about the stakes of the game and what it means for each team. However, the way Port came out and played completely suggests that they were just more up for this game and they had more feel. It's a cliche, but they wanted it more, truly. And that's because of what happened last year and the position that Port were in, needing the win and I guess, the size and importance of gather round and just everything that went into this game. There was no way that Port weren't going to stand up. From a Hawthorn perspective, on that note, you've got to wonder where their head was sort of at coming into this game to get run over the way they did. Was very interesting. I need to note that part of my prediction that Port were going to stand up for this game and that form was going to go out the window is that I still think Hawthorn are a really good football team, and that won't change. They'll be back as soon as this week. Nothing will change. But yeah, I'm glad I got that one right, and I'm glad I went with my gut there because it really was a gut feeling. I could have easily just gone, yeah, Hawthorn are the better side. They should win the game, so I'll tip them. But I really had a good feeling. Now that I'm done pumping up my own tires, thank you for the ego boost, everyone. We can talk about the game a little bit and players and things that happened. Connor Rosie was just. Ken said before the game he had a little surprise, and he was obviously alluding to Connor Rosie going and playing on halfback and playing on Jack Ginnivan, and he was just dominant. And now we're asking the question, is this something that they can stick with going forward? They have a pretty deep midfield. Obviously, Butters, Horn Francis, Ollie Wines, Willem Drew. So they have the capacity to be able to do that if this is the answer to the hole that Dan Houston left, because 28 touches, 2 goals, 7 marks. We're going to talk about it all later in the Player of the Year votes. There's no spoiler there. You have to be a bit dense to think that I'm not going to be all over that again when it gets to that point. But yeah, he was fantastic. Their midfield was unreal. Horn Francis, I thought, was fantastic and back to seemingly what was his best football. Butters was really good. Yeah, just all seemed to come together for this Port team at the right time. And yeah, as I said before, they really just stood up for it. And it'll be interesting to see what that does for their momentum and what it does for them going forward. And is it something that they can maintain? Sydney this week will be a very good game. Port probably need a backup. What they did against the Hawks, and Sydney desperately need a win. So yeah, I will be glued to the couch watching that one. So with that, onto our Player of the Year votes, and we start off with the first three games. Adelaide versus Geelong. 1 vote to Patrick Dangerfield, 2 to Bailey Smith, 3 to Max Holmes. Collingwood Sydney, 1 to Isaac Heaney, 2 to Ned Long, and 3 to Steele Sidebottom. North Melbourne versus Gold Coast, 1 to Tuke Miller, 2 to Noah Anderson, and 3 to Matt Rowell. That is some broken record stuff right there with those three. Starting off with the Crows and the Cats, Dangerfield, 1 vote. Wasn't as unbelievable early on. Still very good. But what he did late to pretty much deliver them the win. Him and Jeremy Cameron, who was very, very stiff, to not get a vote here. But yeah, the way he crashes packs, he was clean with it, got his 4 goals. Just a really solid captain's performance again from danger. Really, really good. But I thought the two best players on the ground were Holmes and Smith. I gave the 2 to Bailey Smith, and the 3 to Max Holmes because I just thought the defensive side of Max Holmes' game is very impressive and was very impressive on the night. But at stoppage and clearance, they both got on the scoreboard, and they were both all over it. Just fantastic, the two of them. And I just edged Max Holmes in the end, but could have been either way, and I wouldn't blame anyone for giving the 3 to Bailey Smith on the night. Collingwood and Sydney, 1 vote to Isaac Heaney. We spoke about him a little bit before, seemingly back to his best on Friday night, and hopefully he can maintain that. 2 goals, 28 touches, 8 clearances. Just seemed his influential self. He was really good. 2 votes to Ned Long, and it was nice to see him have a big game. He's a good one, obviously, because of the concerns that some of us had preseason about Collingwood and whether they bat deep enough. And if they have some injuries, who comes in, who steps up. And he's really stood up already. I thought he was really influential. I like watching him play. Very good player. Good enough for 2 votes. Steele Sidebottom was the best player on the ground. Nick Dacos just misses out. It's Nick Dacos. He'll get votes. He'll get them. They'll come. But Steele Sidebottom. Man, is this the third time this year I've given him votes? Maybe the second time. No, it'd have to be the third time because he's on 7 now. But we'll get to the leaderboard later. But Steele is just aging like fine wine. There was a time watching Steele Sidebottom where you thought maybe he's done. He's not really offering the same thing that he used to, but he's found a way and he's found a role in this side that allows him to really impact. 28 touches, 6 tackles, 13 score involvements as well. Really impressive. Really impressed by how he's been able to impact even at his age. Yeah, really good. North Melbourne Gold Coast. I said before I sounded like a broken record, but truly this Gold Coast midfield is just going to be here so many times this year. Tuke Miller gave him the 1 vote, 27 touches and a goal. Noah Anderson with the 2, fantastic as usual, 27 touches, 7 inside 50s, 12 score involvements, all over it as usual. I thought he was fantastic. And then Matt Rowell with the 3, 26 touches and a goal, 11 clearances, 7 tackles. He's just unbelievable. He's so, so good at stoppage. So hard to stop. And man, the more I speak about the Brisbane midfield and how I think that's the best in the comp, the more I watch this Gold Coast midfield, I think they're almost outright second. It's really, really good to watch. I'm loving it every week. Gold Coast are becoming must-watch footy, and it's amazing after 15 years that they're finally at that point. And a lot of it's because of these 3 midfielders. Next 3 games, Carlton West Coast. 1 vote to Mitch McGovern, 2 to George Hewitt, and 3 to Sam Walsh. Western Bulldogs versus Brisbane. 1 to Zach Bailey, 2 to Hugh McCluggage, 3 to Eric Hipwood. Melbourne versus Essendon. 1 to Nick Martin, 2 to Jai Menzies, and 3 to Zach Merritt. Finally, in the Player of the Year, we get to talk about 3 Carlton players. Amazing. Starting with Mitch McGovern at 1 vote. As I said before, he's been the source of a little bit of criticism in that back line. Hasn't been anywhere near his best, of course. But I thought he was really, really good on Saturday. I thought about giving to Cripper for the 3 goals and the contribution he had up forward. Corey Durden was another option I thought was very good, very underrated on the weekend. But Mitch McGovern, I just thought the way he put his body on the line, so much cleaner with it. I think he was going at like 90-something% off 23 touches, so a lot cleaner with the football, which has perhaps been the biggest criticism of his game over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, just really good from him. By far the 2 best players on the ground were Sam Walsh and George Hewitt. I gave Hewitt the 2. 39 touches, 8 marks, 8 clearances, 7 inside 50s. He's been flying under the radar this year for the work he's been putting in, probably due to the team losing and being as poor across the board as we have been. But if we're starting to be on the incline now and we're going to pull together a few wins, people are going to start to notice the form that George Hewitt's in. Because he's been fantastic. I know for a fact Carlton fans are already noticing. Yeah, and it's a matter of time before people realize how good this guy actually is. However, Sam Walsh was by far the best player on the ground. 37 touches, 3 goals, 5 clearances, 13 score involvements as well. This is the Sam Walsh that we want. week in, week out. He's been nowhere near it. We know that. He knows that in terms of the level that he has been in the past, he's been nowhere near that. And to see him play like this, especially in the first half, I think he kicked all three goals in the first half. But yeah, scoreboard impact, cleaner with the footy, getting plenty of it, strong at stoppage. This is the Sam Walsh we want. Please keep it up. Please keep it up. Because when he's like this, we're going to be a much harder team to beat week on week. Doggies Brisbane felt a little bit stiff not putting a Dogs player in here, based on the really good half of football that they had. However, it had to be these three. I thought Zach Bailey with one vote. We mentioned him before for the work he puts in, 20 touches, three goals. He's very quickly becoming one of my favorite players to watch, and he was fantastic once again. Hugh McCluggage with the two votes. Seems like we're talking about him every week at this point. 32 touches, six tackles, six clearances. He was on his game again. Could have gone with Will Ashcroft. Could have gone with Levi Ashcroft. Could have gone with Matt Kennedy, who I thought was very good from the Dogs as well. But Hugh McCluggage was far and away the best of the lot, in my opinion. The three votes goes to Eric Hipwood. Even on a half of football, which is all he really played, 12 touches and five goals. That half of football is the reason the Brisbane won the game. He's obviously not going to be able to kick five goals in a half of football that often. But as I said before, if he's able to show what he showed in that half of football more consistently and across whole four-quarter efforts, it's going to be massively important for this Brisbane team and how they structure going forward. So yeah, he's pretty much the reason they got the win, and I'm pretty comfortable giving him the three votes there. Demons and the Dons, I gave one vote to Nick Martin. Thought he was really good. 28 touches, a goal, 11 marks. Just seemed like a solid choice for that one voter after the two players who I thought were the two best on the ground. Jai Menzies with the two votes, just killed them. Just killed them forward of the ball. Four goals, 15 touches, eight marks. He was as influential as I've ever seen him. I mean, he's not the kind of player that's had big games like this. So a massive step for him, really, as a fringe player, to be able to, at least for the meantime, cement himself in this team with some good footy. So he was very good. Give him the two votes. Three votes to Zach Merritt. Zach Merritt. It's just always him. 37 touches, eight marks, five tackles. He was everywhere. And he was his influential self, as per usual. So he gets the three for me. And now the Sunday games. Richmond versus Fremantle, one to Shea Bolton, two to Andrew Brayshaw, three to Josh Tracy. St Kilda versus GWS, one to Nazaya Wanganeen-Millerer, two to Lockie Ash, three to Toby Green. And Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn, one to Jack Gunston, two to Jason Horne-Francis, and three to Connor Rosie. Richmond Freo, I thought the 3 and 2 were pretty clear. The one, I was probably between Bolton and Sarong and probably Chapman. I opted for Shea Bolton. I thought, preseason he was my predicted recruit of the year. And I don't think to this point he's really been too amazing. But I think he really took a step up this week in his impact, had some really nice moments against his old side. And ultimately, I think he did enough in the end for that one vote. Two to Andrew Brayshaw. He was fantastic. 31 touches, 10 tackles, six clearances. And at times, especially early, Caleb Sarong wasn't perhaps as influential as he has been over the last couple of weeks. And Andrew Brayshaw really stepped up. The two of them are fantastic every week. So you can always count on at least one of them if one of them are getting tagged to be able to put in that performance. And Andrew Brayshaw definitely did that. Josh Tracy, we spoke about him before. Six goals, gets the three votes. He was just dominant. And having three of those goals in the first quarter, it looked like it was going to be a lot more early on, perhaps 9 or 10, given the way Richmond were playing as the game progressed further and further. So, yeah, he was fantastic, looked very dominant, and did more than enough for the three votes, in my opinion. So, Kilda and the Giants, one vote to Nazaya Wanganeen-Millerer. He's just been fantastic over the last couple of weeks. And 24 touches, three goals in a losing effort, albeit, but I thought he was fantastic once again. Two to Lockie Ash, spoke about him before as well. One of the best games I've seen him play in quite a while. 33 touches, he was all over it. Very clean with it as well. Yeah, super impressive from him. Three to Toby Green, though. 17 touches, five goals. Super impactful. Yeah, just one of those trademark Toby Green performances in the end, really. Yeah, easily best on ground for me. And finally, Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn was very close to giving Zach Butters the one vote. As I said before, he was fantastic. Much like Horne-Francis and Rosie. But Jack Gunston in that losing effort, to play the way he did and to get the opportunities that he did, and be as accurate as he was. 6 goals, 15 touches, 7 marks in a losing effort. I thought it was just enough to give him the edge over Zach Butters, even in a loss. Yeah, he was fantastic. Jason Horne-Francis with the 2 votes, I thought was unbelievable. As I said before, I think he's back to his best, just about. Fantastic to watch. Connor Rozee was the best player on the ground. Half back, 28 touches, 2 goals. Yeah, if they choose to persist with it and it continues the way it does, it's going to be fantastic to watch week on week because he looked really comfortable in that role. And to look that way as well against one of the most informed forward lines in the comp, one of the most talked about small forward setups in the league was very impressive as well. With that, we can now update our leaderboard. Zach Merritt jumps to the top on 8 votes. He's the outright leader now. Steel Sidebottom, Noah Anderson, and Hugh McCluggage all go up to 7, jumping Caleb Sarong on the leaderboard, who led last week. He still sits in 5th on 6, with Max Holmes right behind him. Matt Rowell, Toby Green, and Connor Rozee also sit on 6 votes, but there's not enough room for them because they only made 6 spots, of course. So that is where we sit going into round 6. Moving on to Supercoach now, we scored a flat 2,000 in round 5, which is less than what we scored on Best 18 scoring last week, which is not good. Not good at all. We ended up top 57% for the week, so bottom half, ranked 104,000. Still top 8% overall, ranked 15,000, which is not too bad. Still recoverable, but yeah, round 5 was not good at all. Where did I go wrong is the question. I left 184 points on the bench in my defense. That's a start. Even something as simple as Reed for O'Sullivan would have given me an extra 62. But Trainer also scored higher than Matt Roberts too, which isn't helpful. Matt Roberts is now losing cash, so I might look to move him on going into this week. The other place that I went wrong was the captain choice. I looped Sheasel on the early Saturday game. 102, obviously not enough. And I moved to Caleb Sarong, which was the wrong choice. Granted, no one really scored outstandingly. My highest scoring player was Horne-Francis. And next was Adam Chera. So no one really scored outstanding, to be fair. But I could have gotten an extra, what is it? 32 points out of Horne-Francis. So yeah, just little things. Other points that I left on the bench, Finn O'Sullivan at 69 went better than a couple of players. Jordan Dawson didn't go very well at all. So that's an interesting watch now to see whether I want to move forward with him, despite having only brought him in 2 weeks ago. Not great from him. Oliver 86, I expect him to go better. McRae was a bit unders. He'll go better in future as well. Yeah, just a bit of a down week overall, I think. I'm pretty confident that I can make some right decisions and have better weeks in the near future. In terms of changes last week, I moved to Clay Hall to get that cash gain. He went up about 57k, so that's not bad. And that's actually the only move I made there. So gained a little bit of cash. We're going to make a couple of moves this week, I think. Roberts is probably definitely going to go, given the lower scoring over the last couple of weeks and the price drop. And then I have to work out what else I want to do, probably in this midfield. So yeah, interesting times ahead. All right, we can move on to the tips now. Starting off with Brisbane and Collingwood at the Gabba on Thursday night. I learned recently that this is a traditional clash. They do this every year on Easter weekend at the Gabba on the Thursday night. For the last couple of years, they've been doing that. So yeah, you learn something new every day with that. However, there is a game to talk about. Brisbane and Collingwood. As we've spoken about a few times already on this podcast, Brisbane were fantastic against the Dogs, especially late in that game. Collingwood were a lot better against Sydney than I think they have been in previous weeks. However, I just think Brisbane will keep doing what they keep doing. I think they're going to be up and about, and they might start the game poorly like they have been, but I just think there's no reason, and they've given me no reason to doubt that they're not going to be able to grind out a win against this Collingwood side. So that being said, I'm going to give them the win. They always seem to play close games, these two sides. So I'm not going to tip them by a lot. I'm going to tip them by 10 points against the Pies. It'll be good though. North Melbourne versus Carlton, the Good Friday Super Clash. It's going to be fun to go to the footy after not attending any games during gather round and staying in Melbourne. However, um, I think we're going to win this game pretty comfortably. North Melbourne, obviously, we spoke about their problems before and how they've been fairly competitive and they drop away quite late. Um, or they have done that more often than not over the last couple of weeks. Carlton have typically started games very well and dropped off. Wasn't necessarily the case against the Eagles, but it's a completely different opponent to what we've sort of faced over the first few weeks. But we've started games fairly well, and I think if we start this game very well, we're going to be able to get away from this North Melbourne side. However, in saying that, Good Friday Super Clash, they'll be up for it. They'll give us a bit at times. I just don't think over 4 quarters that they're going to be able to give us too much trouble. And I think one way or another, we're going to probably get away from them in the end. So, look, I don't know if it'll be a pumping. I'm not willing to tip a pumping. So I will tip Carlton by 35 points, but I think we'll win it fairly comfortably. West Coast versus Essendon at Optus Stadium. West Coast were just not up to it on the weekend. They haven't been up to it all season, really. And coming up against an Essendon team that are now coming off 2 wins on the trot and are looking a lot better than what they looked, especially in that Crows game. I think it's going to be another pretty comfortable win for the Bombers. They beat the D's by 39 points on the weekend. Given the way the Demons played and the way that the Eagles do play, I'd say it'll probably be around a similar margin. Um, we'll go the Dons by 47 points. Speaking of Melbourne, Melbourne versus Fremantle, I said before this was going to be a struggler for the Demons. Their issues scoring from centre clearance were plain to see against the Bombers. If you're Melbourne and you beat the Bombers at clearance and you're getting what you get from a scoring perspective out of that, which was not a lot, imagine what will happen when you come up against a side at stoppage who are as good as the Fremantle Dockers. I think this has the potential to get pretty ugly, in my opinion. And the Dockers are on form as well. They've won 3 in a row. I think they might do a number on the Demons here, a pretty big one. I'm going to tip them by 10 goals because that's like a nice round number to say, hey, they're going to smash them. But I don't really, it could be a lot more, but I'm going to say 10 goals. Adelaide GWS, this is a massive, massive game. Huge. This is going to be so interesting. I think the Giants are the better team on paper. They're the better team on form as well. The Crows are coming off 2 losses. But I also think the Crows are definitely going to be a matchup for them. At Adelaide Oval, it's going to be competitive. The two midfields are very good. Both sides are very good at using the football. They're fun to watch. They move the ball well. The forward lines are very good. I think it's going to be high scoring. As much as I'd like to tip the Crows because they're kind of falling away and I want as many competitive teams up here as possible, I just think the Giants are too good. And I think this game is going to show the level that a team like the Giants is at. Like the further we go in, we're going to see the teams start to separate themselves. The really good teams with the finals competitors. And I think the Giants are a really good football team. And I think they're probably just about going to be too good for the Crows in this game. I'm not going to tip them by a lot, but I think they'll win this by 20 points. Richmond Gold Coast, we spoke about this one before briefly, I think. This is just going to be as convincing as it gets. The Dockers beat this Tigers side without a 4-quarter performance on the weekend by 10 goals. And I just think a side playing footy as good as the Suns are playing, they'll just run over this Richmond side. And to be fair, Richmond at times over the last couple of weeks have given teams a good crack. And if they do that, they could make this look okay. But against a side like the Suns, Dimmer Hardwick going back to face his old side, granted, a lot of the players are very different now. But yeah, I just think this is going to be pretty convincing once again. I'll tip him by 54 points, 9 goals. Sydney Port Adelaide is going to be so interesting. Both teams are 2 and 3. Both desperately need the win. Sydney coming off the back of a loss would really like to redeem themselves given the way that they played. Port Adelaide coming off the win that they've come off will want to carry that momentum in and show that they are back essentially. Port are also a bogey team for Sydney, and we have to keep that in mind. Obviously, Sydney beat them in finals, but in terms of the home and away season, Port have had their number more often than not for quite a while. I think based on what I saw in Gather Round, they're very evenly matched teams and they both need a win, as we said. But I just think based on how Sydney played and how I saw the Port players stand up on the weekend, I think that they're probably a little bit more likely to carry that momentum through and put in a good performance. I don't think it's going to be anything too embarrassing in terms of scoreline, but I think they'll win it by 3 goals. Dogs and the Saints both picked up losses during gather round. The Dogs probably should have won, and they'll be a little bit disheartened, but they'll also be pretty hungry, I think, to get that one back. And the Saints were on some very good form. Obviously, picked up the loss against the Giants, so they're going to want to bounce back and show that the form that they were perhaps in over those 3 weeks wasn't really a fluke. This one's a bit of a coin flip for me. I think I was a little bit more impressed by the form of the Saints over the last few weeks, and that makes me lean slightly towards them. I think this is actually going to be very close, but based on some of the quality that the Saints have going through there, the Dogs have plenty of quality as well. And if they get a couple of players back, is Bont ready? That could be a game changer. I'm tipping the Bulldogs. I think the Bulldogs are going to win. Whether Bont's back or not, I think it's so close. Like I said, it's a coin flip. I've literally just changed in the space of 10 seconds. I'm going to tip the Bulldogs. I'm tipping the Bulldogs by 5 points. That's a very close one. Very close one. I'm gonna be pretty interested in that one. We finished the weekend on Easter Monday with Geelong and Hawthorn. Geelong coming off a massive win against the Crows at the start of gather round. Hawthorn coming off quite a big loss at the end of gather round. Is there anything to be made of the breaks there? Because Hawthorn get a an 8 day break, but Geelong get those extra 3 days. I don't know what is to be made of that. Maybe it's a non-story. I don't know. I don't really care. Um, this game's always good. It's always really good. I probably would have tipped Hawthorn with great confidence a couple of weeks ago. Now this Port game has happened, and obviously doubts creep in. And I know I said that I think Hawthorn are still a really good side, but I think this is very interesting now, and it could go either way. I think I still think Hawthorn are the better side. I still think they're the better side. And that makes me think that they're probably going to bounce back here. Because good sides should be doing that. After a loss like what they copped, I think they'll bounce back. Geelong are good, but it would be a statement victory for Hawthorn, especially when we're expecting them to be flag contenders to dispatch of the Cats on Easter Monday and bounce back and show that they're still the real deal. So I'm going to tip Hawthorn, not by a lot. We'll tip them by 16 points. I think it's going to be a very good game. And that brings us to the end of round 6. A couple of very interesting games. It's going to be a good weekend of footy to watch, I think. So with that, we can finish off this episode of the Footy and Stuff podcast. Please like, subscribe, comment as usual, all your suggestions. All the social links are in the description as usual as well. So go and follow them, run those up. Enjoy round 6. Enjoy Easter. Happy Easter to all those who celebrate. And I will talk to you all next week.